location at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. Today is Tuesday, December 24th, 2019, Christmas Eve for those of you out there who celebrate that holiday. So Merry Christmas if you do. In this video that you're about to see, you're going to get to see two different corn snakes and their individual training sessions. You're going to get to see our corn snake Normal, and you're going to get to see a training session where he is voluntarily shifting from his primary enclosure into a secondary holding bin. Then you're going to get to see our corn snake Tuvok, and you're going to get to see how we are training him to become habituated to people. Both of these corn snakes were born in July of 2019. They both came from Port City Pythons. We're extremely happy with both snakes. We're extremely happy with Port City Pythons and wouldn't hesitate to get more corn snakes from them in the future. You're also going to get to see how I have their enclosures set up and how I secure those enclosures. And then we're going to show you an alternate enclosure, and it's actually the type of enclosure that I recommend for corn snakes or any tiny snake that you might have. I just ran out of them, and so when Normal and Tuvok arrived, I put them in something slightly different, but I have more of the other enclosures on order. And so again, you're going to get to see Normal and Tuvok's enclosures, and then you're going to get to see the type of enclosure at the end of this video that I really believe is ideal for tiny snakes, and they work great for the baby corn snakes. It's a little bit longer video than what I normally show you, but I hope you invest the time in it because it's got a lot of really good subject matter. I hope you find it interesting, and you can push the pause button and you don't have to watch it all at once. December 24th, 2019, and what I'm going to show you in this video is a little bit of footage of our corn snake Normal. They're common in the United States, both in the wild and in the pet hobby. He's a normal color. He's the only normal colored corn snake that we currently have, and so that's why I just call him Normal. But he's a fantastic animal. He's very intelligent. I have been training him to do educational outreach as well as training him to a station. And so part of what you're going to see in this video is just what an outgoing animal he is and how he doesn't shy away from human contact, and he likes to come out of his enclosure. And the second thing you're going to get to see is him voluntarily shifting from his primary habitat into a secondary location, which is a temporary holding bin / feeding tub or transport tub. And that is one of the specific behaviors that I've been training him to do.
Well, this is Normal, and I think he is absolutely gorgeous. He may possibly be the most gorgeous snake in our whole family. As you can see, he is not fearful. As soon as I took the lid off of his enclosure, he came right out. I didn't even have time to pick up the video camera and start recording before he was already out of the enclosure exploring. He's tongue flicking, his body's all stretched out, he's moving in a deliberate but slow fashion. Nothing but green zone behaviors are being indicated here. And when I reach for him, you can see that he's not fearful. He doesn't really change his locomotion. He still continues to move at about the same rate. Look at these colors. Aren't these just absolutely gorgeous? I can't imagine how people don't think that the Normal coloration corn snake isn't just the most gorgeous corn snake that you can own. But I'm obviously really happy to have him. He came from Port City Pythons. He was hatched on July 5th, 2019. We're so happy with Normal, and we're so happy to have been able to work with Port City Pythons. Joe and Melissa are both very professional, and they did an excellent job shipping the animals that we got from them, making sure that they did everything possible to ensure a safe arrival. And I cannot say that we have had that experience with other people that we have bought colubrids from. This little guy is Tuvok, and as you can see here, he's demonstrating much different body language and a much different personality than Normal did. Tuvok is more fearful, and he is a much shyer animal. That's okay. In this video, I'm just impressed with the fact that he isn't retreating into a hide, which is usually his normal behavior. He's remaining out mostly in the open, although he's under this plastic foliage that I have in his enclosure, It's making him feel safe. He's tongue flicking and he's popping his head out in order to look at me and see what's going on. That is great. This is normal. As you can see, he's being very active. I've moved his enclosure from where he normally resides into our front work area, and I'm setting it up for his training session. Actually, I'm going to be testing him to see if he has learned the behavior we've been working on for several weeks, which is for him to voluntarily shift from his primary habitat into a temporary holding bin. What I'm just doing is seeing if he will shift out of this enclosure on his own into his travel/feeding bin. I'm just going to see what happens. It's coming out. Since he's at the really early stages, I have his food already in there. Yeah. But later, when he gets good at it, then we want to wait for him to go into the tub and then give him the food. And I possibly should have went ahead and rewarded him because he's gone really far and he stuck his head down into the tub's main part. And I thought maybe he would find the food on his own, but what I probably should have done is reinforce that behavior right then. Because he is just starting to learn this. Oh, he's going back in. See, if he finds the food on his own and takes the food reward, then it's kind of a self-reinforcing exercise versus me presenting it to him. Right. I think he's gonna find it. He found it. Now to see if he'll eat it, because sometimes some of them won't take it unless it moves. Right. I mean, they can be taught to take it without it moving, but sometimes initially I have to move it a little bit. Oh, he's biting it from the middle. He has it in his mouth, but he bit it from the middle instead of the head. Silly boy, Normal. How are you going to swallow that like that? Well, you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to eat it backwards, huh? That's fine. All right, so he's finished eating. And that was only a day old pinky, and that was so that I could give him more than one, because I want to reinforce him being in the tub. So he's getting like 2 day-old pinkies instead of a regular pinky. This is the smallest rodent size that I could buy. Good boy. Normal, you're so smart. Okay, I'm fixing up your enclosure. I'm just going to show you how I have the baby corn snake enclosure set up. And this particular enclosure is a small insect container from PetSmart. I really like
the reptile habitats though that have the sliding screens that slide in, and I have 2 of those for other baby corn snakes. Normal's doing okay in this, but I'm going to be getting more of the type with the sliding lids because I think that they're a little bit bigger and it's easier to make them a little bit more environmentally complex, and also they're pretty escape proof. I don't want to say 100%, but I've never had an animal get out of one of those. I've never had an animal get out of one of these either, but I take extra precautions other than what just comes with the container. So I have about 1.5 inches of aspen bedding in here, and it's so deep because they like to burrow under it sometimes and use that as part of a way that they can hide. And then I really like to use the water dishes that have these little arches on one or both sides, and that the animal can hide underneath. So actually the water dish doubles as a hide. And for my 2 corn snakes from Port City Pythons, Normal and Tuvok, I find them under the water dish hiding more than I find them in their regular hide. But the water dish is on the cool side of the enclosure, and the humidity box, which each of them have with damp sphagnum moss inside, and their regular hide is on the warm side of the enclosure, so it may have to do with that. In this coconut hide, I've just got some fake plastic plant sticking out of the top that gives them a little extra foliage and environmental complexity in here. So I've got that, the humidity box. And I always like to put a paper towel roll, or this is half of a paper towel roll or a toilet tissue roll in there. And then I like to use the rodent tunnels or hamster tunnels in different configurations and put them in here, because not only then is it a different texture than the cardboard and some of the other textures they have in here, but it also, they're different colors, so they see it visually differently, they feel it differently on their body, and it's just something extra for them to climb on and in. And then lastly, I have a PVC perch that's removable, because some corn snakes, especially Normal, he really likes to climb. And so that's the complete setup that I have Normal in right now. He's about 5 months old, and this is what he's lived in since he arrived here. And his next step is going to be a 10-gallon terrarium with the sliding top, and I'll have even more items in that. So this is what the floor plan looks like from the top. The humidity box sits off the aspen bedding a little bit, so he can actually get under the humidity box, or in it, or on top of it, or under the aspen bedding. His coconut hides in this corner, and this is where the heating mat is underneath the enclosure. And then he's got his little jungle that I made out of plastic plants for him. Toilet tissue roll on the cool side, water dish on the cool side. The hamster plastic tunnel is in the middle, and then he's got the PVC perch right in sort of in the middle going diagonal. So I'm trying to give him different textures, different things visually to look at, different things to climb on, around, inside, and to get underneath. Just giving him as much enrichment and environmental complexity as I can. On the front of the enclosure, I keep track of how much he weighs. I keep track of his sheds and his meals on these index cards. And he weighed 20 grams 3 days ago. And when he arrived, he weighed only 10 grams. But he has been a great feeder ever since getting here. I've had no problems in that respect. And I've been station training him and training him for educational outreach. So he gets handled a lot. He comes out of the enclosure a lot and goes into different rooms of the home right now. And then I'm station training him to voluntarily exit his enclosure and go into a temporary bin, either for travel, transport, or to eat, or for educational outreach when I have to take him places, or even when people come here, because eventually he'll be in a large enclosure that won't be convenient to carry around. So if he'll voluntarily shift into a container that we can use for outreach, whether here or at another location, that's fantastic. And this is the lid that comes with these. If you just set it on top, they can clearly push it up. So you need to make sure that all 4 corners snap and that you hear them click, and that the middles click into place. And then they can't push it up. I'm picking it up just by the lid, so it's not going to pop off. And then it has this middle door that you can use, I don't know, for feeding, or it's just like a little escape hatch thing. You also need to make sure that that is closed and that you hear that click twice shut. Now, if you're not going to use this small door, you can put a piece of tape over it, like a piece of duct tape, to keep that held down. And then to reinforce this, if you're afraid that somehow they're still going to get out, which I guarantee if it's 100% functioning and you've snapped all 6 places where you should hear it snap, it isn't going to come off and they're not going to push it. But it's just plastic, and sometimes these things break. And so what you can do after this animal's inside is you can set something on top of this, and that is what I do just as a precaution. I put something on both ends just as a second security measure so that I know for sure that the animal's not going to get out. Now I'm going to see if Normal will shift back into his enclosure on his own. And I'm just kind of holding the transport / feeding bin / temporary holding container next to his regular enclosure. Now, Normal's very outgoing. He may or may not want to go back in his enclosure for a couple of reasons. One reason, he may think he's going to get yet a third food item, which he's not. The other reason is sometimes he actually just likes to stay out of his enclosure and explore. But I'm hoping, since he just ate a big meal, that he's ready to go back in and rest for a while, and it looks like he is. So this has been an example of how you can train an animal to voluntarily shift from their primary habitat into a secondary holding bin, secondary habitat, travel container, wherever you need them to move to. And if you do this consistently, it just becomes second nature to them. And it sure is convenient, especially Normal's not a problem. With him, I can just reach in and get him out and it doesn't stress him and it's fine. But if you have an animal that either isn't used to handling or does not like to be handled, this is really a convenient way to manage them without having to touch them and stress them out, or take the risk of losing the animal because it gets scared and jumps out of your hand or it bites you. It's just a safe way to do it if you can train it. All right, so then we're gonna make sure that this lid gets snapped on in all 4 corners and the middle, and that it's not coming off. And I still have to give him water, but I'm gonna take it back to the room that Normal lived in. Tuvok was hatched also in July of 2019. So Tuvok was hatched July 21st, 2019, and Normal was actually hatched July 5th, 2019, so it's just a couple of weeks older. Now, they do not have the same personalities. While Normal's very outgoing, very comfortable and relaxed around people and in different environments, and is much further in his training, I'm just trying to habituate Tuvok to people right now and get him to form positive associations with me. And so Tuvok, once I find him, is eating in his enclosure. And the goal here is just to have him not hiss at me, rattle his tail at me, or try to run and hide. And so he is most often found under his water dish. And as you can see from his body language, he is definitely not as at ease as Normal. And so the last thing I want to do is reach in and force him out. What I want to do is show him some food and get him to see that when I come into his enclosure, and that when he sees people, it's a positive thing and it's not something negative. I'm feeding him just a day-old pinky, which is a slightly smaller pinky than the size that he can handle. I am at the point now where I can stand here while he eats. He doesn't flee and he doesn't run into another hide. So I left one hide in here available to him. So he had a retreat available and he didn't retreat. And that's a good step in the right direction, because he used to retreat into a hide or he used to burrow under the substrate. Sometimes when he's out on his own exploring his enclosure and I walk in, he stays out now and he will come near the top of the enclosure to see if I'm gonna offer food, and that's a huge change for him because initially if he was out exploring and I walked into the room, he would dart away and hide just as soon as I entered the room. What you're seeing now may not seem like a big deal, but for this particular baby snake, it's a huge deal because he's still eating even though I'm standing right over him watching. He didn't flee into the hide that was available to him. He didn't bury himself under the substrate. He didn't hiss, he didn't rattle his tail, he didn't strike. He did show some behaviors that indicated he was nervous. He coiled up, he S-ed his neck, and those were all yellow zone behaviors that indicated he's not comfortable, but it didn't escalate. So this is a big step for him from how he used to be. On separate occasions when I'm not feeding him, I am taking him out for short handling sessions of a minute or two and then putting him right back, trying to get him to understand that we as humans are not going to hurt him.
Tuvok's being given a second food reward during this training session. Hopefully this will help reinforce positive associations with people. We want him to start forming positive associations with me and in the future with other people. We want him to associate pleasant things with us, and we don't want him to associate anything unpleasant with me or with other people. As you can see with this setup, Tuvok had the opportunity to retreat into a hide during the entire training session, and I'm really pleased he chose not to do that. Tuvok temporarily becomes panicked as I start to replace enclosure items. He's jerky, he's darting, and he's pushing up against the glass in an attempt to flee. I pause and stop what I'm doing, and he calms down very quickly, and he still doesn't retreat to his hide, which is available to him. When I put the other item back in, which is the tree, the plastic foliage, you can see that he's less reactive to it than he was when I replaced the first item. That's great. Then he starts to do some tongue flicking, which is really good. It's a sign of relaxation. And his rectilinear motion starts out relaxed. And then he decides that he's scared because I'm moving around a lot outside of the enclosure, getting ready to replace more items into it. And he does now go into his hide. But if you watch really closely, he is poking his head out of his hide periodically and tongue flicking in my direction. That is great. And that is exactly what I want him to be doing at this point in time. He's curious. He's wondering if maybe I have more food. He's starting to associate me with, if not something pleasant, at least something that maybe he doesn't have to be afraid of. And here he pops his little head out. He's tongue flicking in my direction. And then he slowly retreats back in. And these are all really good signs that he's starting to come around.
This is the type of enclosure that I was talking about before that's really ideal for tiny baby corn snakes, garter snakes, or any type of snake that is so tiny that they could potentially get out between sliding glass doors, between doors that open out, or sneak out between the spaces they give you for the temperature probes, etc., in like the glass terrariums. And this type of enclosure has a sliding lid. And there is a pair of Okiti corn snakes in here that are the same age as Tuvok and Normal, but they unfortunately did not come from Port City pythons, and that was a horrible purchasing experience that perhaps I will go over in another video, because there are some lessons learned there. And from here on out, unless I buy a corn snake at a local reptile expo, it is only going to come from Port City pythons or from another reputable snake breeder that I know very well and have had snakes shipped here from before. But at any rate, they're the same age as Normal and Tuvok, and Normal and Tuvok from Port City pythons weigh 20 to 23 grams, These two little babies are the same age, born in July as Tuvok and Normal were, and they are only 6 and 8 grams. They are not even 10 grams, and nor were they when they arrived. Their shipping just was a whole nightmare, and I'll have to talk about it in another video. It was 4 days before I got the snakes from the time that they left to the time that they were in my hands, and I was so scared they weren't going to make it. But they're only 6 grams and 8 grams. They were living together before. I separated them when they got here, but they both became extremely distressed, and I ended up putting them back together. And this is a 10-gallon terrarium. It has these grooves in it so the lid slides in, and even as tiny as these two are, there's just no way that they can get out of here, because all of the edges are sealed with silicone, and then there's plastic on the bottom on top of that, and then there's this sliding lid, and there's just no way that they can get out. And the other thing is it comes with a pin that you can put in there so that it can't slide out while this pin is in. And I've never had any type of snake escape from this. The one thing I will caution you is this is a screen top. So if you have other animals like cats or dogs that jump up, or I suppose even larger pocket pets like a rabbit that could jump on top of this, other large snakes that might crawl on top of it, or if you're the type of person that tends to set things down on top of other things without thinking about it, this isn't gonna hold heavy items. And so what I have done in the past is PetSmart, Petco, Amazon, Chewy sells these metal mesh screen tops that are just meant to go over a regular aquarium. And I will put one of those over this one as a secondary security device, so that if things climb on top of it, the screen's not going to crash in, and that has worked very well. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary. Until next time, everyone, please be kind and remember to always love your animals.